Up for you today, a modern classic rose from English breeder Peterbilt's. Launched and introduced by Peterbilt's in 2004, this is part of their signature collection and it's called Ivors Rose. It is really enchantingly beautiful, and if you're familiar with Thomas A. Becket from David Austin Roses, you'll be quite familiar with this large pin-cushioned rosetted shape. Much like Thomas A. Becket, the heads do tend to hang a little. They are quite large for the shrub that they're actually born by. But let's get into all the basics first before we talk about this fabulous flower. As I say, bred and introduced by Peterbilt's in 2004, Ivors Rose is a shrub, modern classic shrub reaching around 3 feet by 3 feet. Now, very surprisingly, it's a big, brute, beastie, heavy looking rose, really thick, strong canes, some as thick as my thumb, very, very upright, very, very proud and very stocky in its growth, producing a really solid round shaped bush. So nice and tidy and perfect if you want a statement piece for a large patio planter or pot. The rose itself is actually fairly thorny in its old growth, so the lower stems right down that permanent structure you'll be creating over the first 3, 4 and 5 years as you do your pruning and create that lovely open shaped goblet bowl I talk about a lot. Those particular stems will have a lot of thorns on them. However, the new growth, which actually bears the flowers sometimes singly and sometimes in small sprays, is actually virtually thornless. This one up to 12 inches long, making this absolutely perfect for cutting. This particular bloom I've got here, I cut 3 or 4 days ago and I've been trialing it in a vase, and you can see it's holding up really quite nicely. It's been in the house and it's really quite warm, so it is cutting quite nicely. Blooms born either individually, as I say, like this one here, or in small sprays of 3s, 4s and 5s. The foliage is a really lovely dark olive green with a beautiful red tinge around the outside edges, framing it really, really beautifully. The growth tips as well, bearing the flowers, have a lovely scarlet edge running all the way up to the very, very top of the bud, which is a nice characteristic and pulls together the combinations really quite nicely. Unlike some roses, the buds open exactly the same colour as the actual flowers all the way from as soon as they break. There's no flashing of any different colours or pigments there whatsoever. It's this lovely deep cerise pink that you can see here. A lovely open flat flower with a pincushion eye right in the centre, really, really deeply ruffled. This one has a hugely high petal count. Now, not particularly practical if you're a pollinator, unfortunately, but there's not really a great deal to be had in these large modern roses if you're a flying insect. So not great on that particular front, but a very, very attractive rose nonetheless. A really good repeat flowering rose, which is in flower now here in the 2nd week of June, and this is going to continue to flower all the way through to the back end of September into October, and you can see the 2nd volley of flowers already. This one born individually, I say some come in sprays like this one here, but this is the repeat rapidly coming up behind this large bloom I cut several days ago. I say perfect for growing in a pot. Peterbilt's are also stating that this particular rose will do well in partial shade and if you have a particularly poor soil. So maybe it's not particularly high in organic matter, it may be a little on the free draining side, or maybe you have a new build property with lots of rubble around. This rose should do really well for you. Very disease resistant, it's vigorous and strong, and has stood up to all of the challenges that 2023 have thrown at it so far, showing no signs of black spot, no signs of mold and mildew. Yes, it has the customary whitefly and blackfly, but absolutely everything in the garden has done this year. Peterbilt's have been very honest about the fragrance on this rose, as marketed with absolutely no fragrance, and I have to agree with them. It's going to score 1 out of 10 on the fragrance rating. I can actually pick up on a small amount of honey and pollen there, so it's a very signature sort of flower smell that you get from the rose, but very, very beautiful and standing up to cutting very nicely as well. So this bloom 2 or 3 days old in the house and still absolutely fine. A little bit on the limp side, but it is a young plant, so maybe that will improve with age. But much like Thomas A. Becket from David Austin Roses, the colour is very, very similar. These large heads measuring 3 to 3.5 inches across do have the tendency just to nod ever so slightly. slightly, but this is Ivors rose from Peterbilt's, launched in 2004. A really nice, healthy, strong, modern shrub rose, perfect for growing in a pot or anywhere else in the garden, with a really lovely, beautiful cerise pink flower, a good, strong repeat, and fantastic disease resistance, making it a good all-round classic in the garden.